start the recording. Okay, it's important to start practicing today on domain 1 because you know we covered most of domain 1 today, and by tomorrow the practice that you will do today will give me the indication of what it is that we need to focus on and go back to in domain 1. Okay, so I need your cooperation in practicing more and more today domain 1. Okay, just focus on domain 1. All right? You all good?
Yeah.
All right, so let's continue. I remind you that what we do now is security governance. Still, chapter 1, security governance, the rules on how to do security in our organization. What is right and what is wrong, and how to set the rules and all the soft controls that we saw, and the approach to security, data classification, and so on and so forth. Now we start looking at the variables or components of a risk. And we will dig deeper bit by bit into the definition of risk until we get to the risk formula, which I think will be after the break. But between now and then, we will need to cover some areas, some definitions in risk management. First one is threat modeling. And if you want to fully understand what threat modeling is, it's basically acting or playing the hacker, playing the bad things that can come and attack us, use or exploit our vulnerabilities. So for the threat modeling, we have two approaches set by Microsoft and that ISC adopted into the CISSP methodology. The first one is the old one called DREAD, and the new one, the enhanced one, is the STRIDE. Okay, each one of them it's an acronym, and it stands for this type of threats. So the DREAD, damage potential, reproducibility, exploitability, and so on and so forth. And the new one, the enhanced one, the STRIDE, is the new one that we use today to direct tests and penetration tests and hacking techniques when we want to challenge our control. So say that you as a CISO, as a CISSP, can direct your provider to follow the STRIDE threat modeling when they do penetration testing. And again, penetration testing and threat modeling goes together, and it's something you want to do before you go live with your system. This is a test you want to go through, and we see that especially in software development or system development environments that run the threat modeling as part of the pre-production tests that they run on that system. So basically, act like the hacker, act like the bad that can happen or exploit your vulnerabilities. Now, the way to to treat threats is by identifying them. However, threats will not always be detectable. We will not always know about threats that can exploit our vulnerabilities. So for the threats, what we say is that are basically outside of our control. We cannot control threats. Since we cannot control threats, that means that we're not going to waste time, energy, resources on controlling them. Okay, all we can do is try to identify them. And when identifying threats, when I'm saying let's identify our threats, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Your mind. What's threat identification to you?
Vulnerability scan?
No. Vulnerability is vulnerability identification. Threat identification is the threat that can exploit our vulnerability. So when I say threat identification, what will be the first thing that comes to mind?
Risk.
Again, no. Not in that area. Let's give it another
try. Attacks.
attacks.
Attacking, exploiting the vulnerability and
Right. That's much closer. However, let me direct you on the threat itself. Threat, since it's always out there and it's always outside our control, when we try to identify the threats, we really say, let's try to collect some intelligence on the way hackers look at us. Okay, that's threat analysis, threat identification. Okay, we look at them and we say, okay, what do they see that represents us as individuals, as organizations? Okay, we ask, what is the threat? That's the threat intelligence. Okay, that's the first thing that comes to mind when we say threat identification. Threat, right? Familiar with threat intelligence, right? We ask a question. We can ask a third party. We can ask the internet. We can ask. There are many SaaS out there, software as a service, that we can ask. What are hackers actually talking about my organization? What information do they use to plan the next attack against my organization? So this is. Just want to share this with you. My lovely daughter just prepared a cup of coffee for me with whipped cream and all. Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, that's good education, good father loving education.
Good best.
Again, we want to collect information about the threats. However, always remember that we cannot control the threat. No matter what we do, we cannot control it. And now, Jeddah, you mentioned threat that exploits a vulnerability. Okay, so exploitation is against the vulnerability. Now, what we say about vulnerability is two things. A, vulnerability is always under our responsibility and under our influence. So we can influence the vulnerability. We can change it. We can change the landscape of vulnerability. We can change the landscape of controls that surround the vulnerability, and we can control the vulnerability. Also, since we are always a moving business, okay, growing business, the business is a living organism, okay, then the assumption is that we always have vulnerabilities. No matter what we do, where we do it, we always have vulnerabilities in place, vulnerabilities that we need to address, okay? And we can always change them and influence them. Threat vectors are those areas or open doors and windows, whether we know about them or not, that will be used by those threats. So the threat vector is the vector of which the threat is trying to exploit the vulnerability. For example, if we have uneducated employees on cybersecurity and on security importance, okay, they're not trained, they're not educated on this. This is a vulnerability by itself. The way to address this vulnerability is to do awareness training, right? Now, sorry, if the threat, if a hacker, social engineer, realizes that our users are not educated on cybersecurity, they can manipulate them and use this vector of social engineering against our users to penetrate our organization. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Carlo, did you have a question?
No.
All right. Cool.
In this case, the vulnerability is the user itself.
Exactly. The users themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, the attack surface for this example, what will be the attack surface in this example?
The bottom.
You can do it with, no, you can do it with email. You can do it with
No, that will be the vector. Email will be of attack or attack vector. What will be the attack surface?
phishing.
The attack surface is the number of uneducated users that we have. Okay? So the more uneducated users that we have, the larger attack surface the threat, the hacker, the social engineer has. Make sense, Shaha?
Yeah.
Okay, again, social engineer threat. I cannot influence that guy, right? I cannot change that. It's a fact.
It's very it's parallel. It's like the attack surface and the attack vector.
Right, right.
They have some
It sounds very
things
much the
in common.
same. Right.
I
This
guess
guy,
also this is what they are playing on in the test. Like
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. That's what they're looking for in the
Mhm.
test. This guy can pick up the phone and give us a call. That's the vector of attack.
Mhm.
This guy lands any possible employee that we have, 1,200 employees, 12,000 employees, okay, can land any one of them. That is the attack surface. That's the opportunities that he has to execute the attack. Okay? All right? Good? And the action that he takes on the user is called exploitation. We will get to that shortly, but it's called exploitation. So a threat exploits the vulnerability. The vulnerability itself is the user and the unaware user. All right? Also, we work according to many methods out there. Some of them are mentioned in the book, some of them are simply part of the cybersecurity management landscape. But basically, what we're saying is that we're not to score or give scores to our own vulnerabilities. There are scores, acceptable ways of scoring the vulnerabilities in the market of cybersecurity, so others are doing it for us. That means that when my vulnerability can get the highest score, and it's not something that I set as the CISO. Do you see that? There's no conflict of interest. I use the CVSS, I use the Octave, and it gives me the score according to the methodology set by someone outside my organization, not by me. Because if I set the score of the vulnerability very low, now I can influence the risk, and that's not a fair game. That's not called a risk management, okay? Now, two terms that we need to consider, that they're both saying the same thing. In your CISSP, ISC will use either the word impact, okay, or probability / likelihood. The word probability and likelihood are the same, okay? Sometimes they use probability, P. Sometimes they use the word likelihood, L. But it's the same. It's the same thing, okay? Impact is impact. Impact is damage, okay? It's always an impact. Likelihood is the other side of it, and both creates a risk. Okay, so a multiplication between the I, impact, and the probability / likelihood will create a risk rank, okay? A number for risk or a level of risk, all right? Any questions so far? Okay. Security requirements. Let's put that aside for a second, and we'll get back to this shortly. The risk management. Security requirements. Security requirements can come in from many different sources. It can come from vendors. It can come from clients. It can come from regulators. Basically, all these requirements come in to our organization and really saying, you know, this is the type of governance, security governance, that I expect your organization to have in place. However, with all these requirements, one thing that we don't want to do, and this is something that CISSP don't like when you do it, you know, in your exam, to take the FUD approach. FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Okay, so if you take that approach in your questions, you know, let me give you an example. You want to create user awareness. Okay, so by targeting the user awareness, you as a CISO decide to target a user, spearfish them, take the results, publish it on the company's website, and embarrass the user so badly that they want to literally thinking of quitting the organization. Maybe you achieved the your personal, maybe a little objective to test the user, but you lost your crowd. Do you see what I'm saying? You lost your crowd because what you did is you took it to the fear, uncertainty, and doubt level, and you basically broke any channel of communication, any future channel of communication between you and your users, and you don't want to be in that area. Okay, so when in your questions, and I know that you're not gonna fall for these questions, but if they present to you the tough way of doing security and let's rock the boat, let's keep it scary for everyone, let's keep it threatening for everyone. Security is a threatening thing, is a scary thing. This is not the right approach. Okay, so try to avoid this type of answers in your CISSP exam. Another topic. As your business grows and as your business evolves, again, we said the business is a living organism. A lot of requirements will come from the outside. Those requirements probably will change the way your business thinks. For example, GDPR, let's take 2, 3 years back. GCP, our organization, was probably in a different position toward privacy than it is today. Maybe we did privacy, maybe we didn't do anything in privacy, but we definitely today, we do something else in privacy, okay? Something more than what we used to do. So changes in your business will require to change your governance. And changes in your business can occur from mergers and acquisitions or anything related to regulations and so on. And those changes need to be managed and monitored due to the same concerns that we mentioned before for change management. Okay, so we mentioned that before. Third-party governance is when your requirements for governance are coming from the outside, mostly from laws and regulations and standards in your industry. Okay, so this is the third-party governance. It's governance landscape that is not related to you. You cannot control it, and in some way, it can relate to threats. Okay, so we're not saying that the law is a threat, but definitely we're saying that compliance is just another risk that we want to manage. Okay, so bear that in mind as you look at questions on laws and regulations. Okay, this is just another risk that we want to address. Another couple of terms here that we need to understand. RFI, when we talk about procurement, our business is expanding, our business is growing, and we're going through procurement processes. So 3 terms that we need to remember: RFI, RFP, and RFQ. RFI is request for information. Basically, the organization is going out there and saying, okay, what can I do about network segmentation? Okay, why is it important for us as security people to know what RFI means? Why do you think this is part of the CISSP?
Well, in order to get the confidential information that you require.
There you go. Yes. When publishing the RFI, someone in the organization will probably give more information than what needs to be shared outside. And we need to be aware of that. Okay. Procurement is good because it means that the business is growing. Okay. However, it needs to grow securely. Okay. Is this what you wanted to say, Valentino?
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. The same thing for RFP. Now, we got the information that we wanted from the RFI. People explained to us about the network segmentation that we wanted to do. And now we ask for proposals, okay? So the proposal is, again, reaching out to those vendors and saying, okay, we need a proposal for 1, 2, and 3. And again, for the same reason, Valentino, we don't want to share too much information with our vendors, okay, with the outside world, because RFI, RFP are public by nature, are public processes. They can probably expose a lot more information than what we wanted to if we're not part of the process. And the last one is the RFQ. RFQ is request for quotes. Okay, request for quotes means that I like your proposal, I like the information that I got from you, and on this information, you built the proposal. Now I just want to know how much I'm going to pay for it. Most organizations will do the whole thing together under the headline called RFP. Okay, but you need to remember that there can be processes, sub-processes here called RFI, RFP, and RFQ, obviously. Right? Are we good there?
How does RFQ is related to security policy or governance? This is I kind of lost it.
Valentino, do you want to give it a try?
So basically, request for quote means that you're happy with it's in the final process of the RFI, because you already achieved the RFI, so everyone's happy with the information that's been provided.
Right.
And then the proposal comes along and it explains everything within the RFI that's been discussed. And then once you get the quote, it basically completes the whole transaction to say we're all happy, we're in agreement. Please provide the quote so that we can go ahead and move forward.
Yeah, I know what is RFP and RFQ, but I'm asking what is the relation here
Why
to...
is in the CISSP?
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
RFI and RFP I can understand. You want to make sure that the information you get is correct, is according to the law, is according to the licensing, also the product is according to security standard. But RFQ is just agreement on how much you want to pay for the product.
Exactly. So let me give you an example. And thank you, Valentino, for giving it a try. But let me give you an example. You all heard about Target, the giant American retail company, right? Target.
Yeah.
You all know about the 2013 incident that they had, the leak that they had of credit card information, over 140 million credit card and debit card information leaked to the internet. What people don't know about this incident is that the year before this, 2012, the CIO of Target, and by the way, during that incident, Target didn't have a CISO or anyone certified with information security. They fixed that later on. So the year before the incident, 2012, the CIO went on a huge publication. They did an article about Target, explaining how Target moved from various technology and vendors to only working with Microsoft. So he was bragging about the fact that giant Target is now Microsoft shop, only Microsoft. He gave the details of every technology that they used, all the latest technology of Microsoft, and he explained that they even got a really good price. Now, Target being Target, a public company, all this RFI, RFP, RFQ are all public information. Okay, so I don't know how much information from the RFP and RFQ helped the hackers plan their attack, but I know it was valuable to planning this exact attack.
So it's more related to information disclosure, like which information, which public information you disclose to. Okay.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be like RFQ.
Right, and we will return to this. I can know who your vendors are, how important you are for them. The lower the price you get compared to the market means that you're very valuable because they give you huge discounts. Okay, so we will get back to this on domain 6 and domain 8 when we will talk about the notifications that software developers give the users. Sometimes we say, this is the right user, but it's the wrong the wrong password. Okay, this is too much information. What I expect from my development team is to say either the user or password are incorrect or both. Okay, don't give the indication, don't give that too much information or indication to the threat to build their next step of the attack. Does that make sense, Rachel?
Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. As we grow and as we expand the business, as you can see, security governance is supposed to be a big part of the expansion of our business. We probably do acquisitions. We probably do purchasing and acquisitions of other organizations. While doing that, it's important for us security personnel to always think how secure is this other acquired organization and what threats, what new threats it brings to my organization. Okay, so security in mind as we do acquisitions. And also when we acquire new technologies. New technologies brings faster and much scalable processes. Great, we want that. We are happy with this. However, they probably also bring in some new risks for our security environment, and we need to consider that as well. Okay? As we expand, we also want to make sure our vendor landscape is well secured and protected. And we can do that, we can achieve that, the vendor security, by doing vendor governance. We can do audits, we can do ask them in contract to comply with our policies and procedures. We can ask our vendors to go through screening with their personnel. It all depends on the risk appetite that we have for security. And this can be decided only in senior management level, okay? We can decide that a certain level, a certain vendor is at much more risk to us than any other vendor. And we want this one to go through a much thorough security screening processes, okay? Some other terms in the vendor management landscape. The first one is BPA, Business Partnership Agreement. Those are two businesses that want to work together and they put together a business partnership agreement. Okay, it's a joint initiative of both companies. The second one is Memorandum of Understanding, which is Memorandum of Understanding, which is MOU or MOA, Memorandum of Agreement. This is basically the terms that we agree on between two parties, okay? The initial agreement before we have the contract itself, okay? To get guidelines on the MOU and MOA, we have the NIST. It says, excuse me, that's a different topic. So the MOU and MOA are basically to set the ground for an agreement between two companies, okay? Interconnection security agreement means that we want to now connect two areas of technologies together and we create this agreement for the two parties. The two parties can also be from two different organizations, but also can be from the same organization if you're talking about a big organization. So here, let me just correct this. It's not NISA, it's supposed to be NIST. And the interconnection security agreement set the requirements, and again, governance requirements for this connectivity between two organizations or two parties that connecting their technology, and even can even be related to an organization that acquires another organization and the way they're going to connect their technology environment. All right. Now, the next one is SLA. SLA stands for Service Level Agreement, and I know that everybody's familiar with the SLA. However, the SLA, what I would like to emphasize here, and would probably be a good idea to remember this. SLA is an agreement between an organization and someone outside the organization, okay? So it can be a customer, it can be a business partner, it can be a vendor, okay? SLA is the organization with another party outside the organization. The other side of it is OLA. OLA stands for Operating Level Agreement, Operational Level Agreement. OLA is the agreement, the same thing as SLA, but internally, inside the organization. So an agreement between the IT department and the CISO office. Okay, they have an agreement, OLA agreement. It's an agreement between the warehouse that provides all the boxes and shipment to our customers and the development team. The development team works with the customer and they promise them to build them this and that, and then they're very much dependent, their success is very much dependent on the warehouse and the shipment and logistics and all. So these two departments create an OLA between them two, okay? And now it acts as an internal SLA. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
All right, we all good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. In terms of licensing, again, governance, security governance, the set of rules that we need to obey. In terms of licensing, Enterprise License Agreement, you're probably all familiar with it, ELA, is the agreement that we sign with a vendor of software, okay, or some sort of a solution that provides us licenses to use across the enterprise. Okay, so I assume that GCP signed with some sort of ELA with Microsoft, for example, right, to work on their Office 365 and Windows packages. So that will be an ELA, okay? That's the enterprise level license agreement. The next one is software license agreement, which is more narrow, more focused on one software, okay? So you buy a software and you have that license agreement that is related to that software, okay? And you agree to that. It can be even the EULA, the end user license agreement. It's for one software. You get an agreement by breaking the seal or continuing the installation and so on. So this software agreement is between us, the organization, with one party, okay? And this is the conclusion of chapter 1. Yay!
So I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was a question about one question that I remembered, that if two organizations make an agreement, a business agreement, and one of the organization is bankrupting, there are agreements to assist one of the companies in case the bankrupting company cannot provide the service that
Right.
That it should.
Right.
Which agreement are we talking about?
Right. So you're asking about what type of agreement the businesses will have between them to cover this type of incident.
Yes.
This will be the business partnership agreement, the BPA. Okay, because this is the strong one. The other one that they can consider when they think about this possibility can be the memorandum of understanding. Okay, so the memorandum of understanding is the premature BPA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions, guys?
No.
All right. Okay, cool. Are you ready for chapter 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, let's do this. All right, chapter 2 is
Absolutely.
about personnel security.
Wait. I have another question.
Go ahead, ask away.
You went over a lot of slides, and each one of them is a different topic.
Right.
how do we drill down to those topics, or how do we integrate? Do we need to integrate between those topics? Is there anything that, I mean, let me ask you like this. Is there any relation between each topic, or we need to know each one as a separate unit for the test?
All right. So the answer is both yes and no. As you can see, this is a pattern here in CISSP, right? We can have both answers.
Mm-hmm.
Each each domain can be studied separately. You can start studying for your CISSP with domain 5, domain 8, okay? However, inside this domain, the chapters are accumulating knowledge. So it's important to start with chapter 1, then 2, 3, and 4 for domain 1, okay?
Yeah, but right now you throw at us a lot of bits
Right.
of information. Okay,
Right.
how do we integrate them? I mean, because the questions that we got from you, the question that CISSP, sometimes they are more than they're more just than the information that you throw at us.
Right. So the questions here are setting the ground for you to cover the next chapter in the domain 1 and probably more complex questions. For example,
So we are still in domain 1. We are still.
Yeah, this is domain 1. Yes, this is domain 1.
Okay. Okay.
For example, level 1 question will be, for example, to ask you, to ask you about the difference between SLA and OLA.
Oh, no. Okay.
So this is the simple one. The level 5 questions will probably take the risk and describe an OLA in an organization that will probably need an SLA with the risk factor. Okay, so tying more chapters to that question, and this part will become, kind of another corner in the question, but not the focus of it.
So this is exactly my question. How do we integrate this information to level 5 questions?
Perfect. So this is accumulating. Okay, so we will need to go through all 4 chapters and get to the idea of how all domain 1 looks like in those questions.
Okay.
But as far as I understand, it might also not be a security risk. It might be an actual business risk.
Oh,
By the looks of this, I say by the looks of this, it might not just be a security risk question. It might be an actual business risk as well.
You can expect more business questions than specific security questions.
Yeah.
Yes, that's where they want you to be. Okay, they want you to get to the complex scenario-based questions that will probably encompass more than just one topic. So if you have a question that is precise on the ALA, OLA, and SLA, this is a precise question. That means that it doesn't cover that much area of knowledge, okay? And a question that will take chapter 4, chapter 1, and chapter 3 of domain 1 altogether, this will probably be the level 5 question on domain 1. Make sense? Yeah. Great. All right, any other questions, guys?
No.
All right. So personnel security. When I say personnel security, what are we really talking about? We're talking about the people that that are in every corner of the business. People that sell products to our clients, manage clients, get in agreement with vendors, manage the business, manage the money, and also do security. The people factor are the number one factor that we need to consider when we do information security risk management, because the people are the main thing that will probably change over time, and not necessarily the technology. Technology will not change as frequently, as people's state of mind. Okay, so that's why we emphasize the people or personnel security here, so we can control or try to put certain controls in place to make sure security is maintained and kept with our personnel, the organization personnel. So for this area to do personnel security, we need to do we need to take some certain actions with our personnel. First one, we need to identify the start point of our personnel. The start point of our personnel is when we interview them. Before we hire them, before we bring them in to the organization. And before we do that, we run some background checks, some screening, okay? We reach out to them, they look like great candidates, they tell us a story, much like the I part of the identification. If you remember the IAAA, they tell us a story. Now we want to verify this, okay? So we run background checks. We make sure that this story lines up. This story is true, okay? If it's not true, then we don't hire them. We don't bring them in. They're not trusted by us, okay? Now, after we brought them in, we can still run some background checks during their employment. When do you think will be those times to run background checks again or some sort of screening again on an existing employee? What will be that event that will trigger another background check on that employee?
I would say something like a departmental change or promotional change or something like that. As soon as he gets
Great,
more authority or he or she gets more authority.
great, great. They get, come again, Alan?
Or periodic check once in a time, I don't know, once a year or something like that.
Changes, promotions, right? If they get more responsibilities, if they move laterally, if they move from one department to another department doing something else, but this something else has different sensitivities in the data and systems that they touch. So now we want to run background checks to make sure that that individual can be trusted with that environment. Okay, we do that as we hire them, and we do that as they change their employment. Okay. Another control that we can have for personnel is awareness, training, and education. Okay, so awareness is something that we do for everyone in the organization. Okay, we do that for all employees. We do that for new employees, we do that for existing employees, but we do awareness for all employees. And how do we do awareness? We do it with billboards, and we do it with movies, and we do it with phishing campaigns, and we do it all over the place for everyone to raise their awareness towards security, to understand that there's such a thing, such an important thing called cybersecurity, and we want them to be aware of it, okay? We want them to be ready. Training, however, training is taking our employees and train them on how to do their role better. So if awareness is for everyone and it creates the cultural change, the training will be more precise. For example, I can sit with the HR department and train them on how to do better data classification on the HR system. Okay, so that's more precise for that department. Education is something we do with professionals. So we take our team, for example, much like this group that we have here in the bootcamp, people from security, people from IT, people from the business, and we train them on something that they don't currently have, on some sort of skill set that they don't currently have. And this will enhance our personnel, okay, to gain more security skills. Make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, just going back on this because this is important. The difference between awareness training and education is this. Awareness is for everyone in the organization, and the more the merrier. Okay, maybe you want to write it down somewhere.
So
Awareness for everyone, the more the merrier. Training is specific training, security training for specific part of the organization. So we're not telling them something they don't know. We're just enhancing specific areas of the business, okay? And education is building a new skill set for people in security, okay?
So,
Yep.
so I would also add like contractors and stuff like that under the awareness. For instance, I would also add contractors
Yep. Yep.
into the awareness tab. For instance, if
Yes.
contractors comes into your environment, make them
Right.
aware of the security so that they know what they should and should not do.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you, Valentino. Contractors, third parties, we all want them to be aware because we want to create a secured culture. Okay, so this is done through awareness. Perfect. And great point that you mentioned that, Valentino, because the word everyone is the beginning of this. Okay, everyone is literally everyone. Okay, not just our users. All right.
Yeah.
Are we all good with this? Because this is important. This is important. Not a whiteboard, but this is important. Okay? They keep asking questions about the differences of the three. All right. As we said, as we're hiring new employees, we want to make sure we're bringing the right people and we do the right hires for the right roles. Also, we want to make sure that security requirements are there from the hiring process. So we want to do screening, we want to do background checks, but maybe we also want to mention security requirements in the job description that we put out there. For example, if we recruit someone from marketing, and our marketing is targeting individuals somewhere. Maybe part of the job description we need to mention the familiarity of privacy regulations in Europe. So this guy or this girl is coming in to do marketing to individuals. We don't want them just shooting emails to everyone. Maybe we want to consider and add to the job description the word privacy and Europe. Okay, so we want someone that is already familiar with the GDPR and requirements, and they will not just run and shoot out there to get the next leads. All right, make sense?
Yeah.
All right. We talked about rotation of duties previous chapter, and here we call it cross-training. It's the same thing, okay? Job rotation can also be considered a form of cross-training. Again, we're talking about this cross-training that creates availability, but it's also it also can help us detect fraud. And the next couple of controls that we're going to talk about are for fraud prevention and detection. So cross-training, job rotation is moved from fraud detection. Also, mandatory vacation. Mandatory vacation is when your organization, you come in Monday morning to the organization, and this is done mainly in financial institutes and mainly in the States. You come in the morning, Monday morning, and I worked for Kaiser Permanente, which is also an insurance company for medical insurance. They do a lot of stuff, but they also do this. So you come in one Monday morning, and the badge is not working downstairs at the lobby, and you go to the security guard, and he's saying, okay, wait here for a second, Mr. Rafael. And then your supervisor comes down, and they say, okay, I need your badge, and you go home for a whole week. You're on vacation, yay! You want to go on vacation. And they say, okay, for some roles, they will even ask you to deposit your passport in the nearby police station. And the reason they do that is that they send you on vacation and they put someone else instead of you doing your role, and by that, they want to detect fraud, okay? So this is done in financial institutes, and you can expect that to take place sometime during the year. The more sensitive your role is, the more money that is involved in your role, you can expect more of this. Okay. The thing is here is that we don't want people to know that this one is coming, because fraud detection is all about that, right? We want to be we want this to be a surprise for the fraudsters. We don't want them to prepare the ground. There are so many stories, even here in Israel, about fraudsters that didn't take a day off for 15 years working for the bank, and apparently, one day they missed their job. Eti Alon and the Bank Le'Mischar, for those Israelis guys here with us. Yeah, she didn't take a time off for what, 15, 20 years? And all of a sudden, when they started looking at her and they digged in, they said they saw that she was, after her birth, she gave birth. 3 days after the birth, she already went back to working in the bank because she didn't want anybody to touch her customers. She was committing fraud, huge fraud that brought the bank down. One person brought a whole bank down in Israel. So this is huge. So mandatory vacation is when your organization says, go home, stay in town, don't leave town, stay at home. We're going to pay you money, but we're going to have someone else do your job. And this is no notice, no nothing, just happens. And hopefully you all do your job well and not commit fraud so no one can point fingers at you at any given time. I'm just joking, We're insecure.
I want my mandatory vacation next week.
Oh, you do?
Let me decide about the the timing. Be a surprise,
Okay, 2 weeks. 2 weeks is also good.
More better.
All right. Another topic that we have here is acceptable use policy. Probably you all heard about this and even saw it and even signed it as you started working for GCP or any organization. It's the acceptable use policy. They say, okay, in order for you to use our computerized systems, to use our system, to use our data, this is what you're expected to do with it. Okay, you read and sign, and this is again a soft control, a directive control, cannot enforce what it says in it. Personnel monitoring is when you say, okay, you sign on the acceptable use policy, and now I'm going to monitor you. Now I'm going to make sure that you actually comply with it. So this will be a way of enforcing that AUP. Okay, makes sense? The relation between the two controls? The AUP is one control, and the monitoring is another control, but they work together. Another control we have for personnel is the NDA. NDA means that no non-disclosure agreement means that the individual signing the NDA is committed not to share, not disclose sensitive information or information in general that is considered sensitive. Now, the loophole that we have here is that organizations sometimes tend to think that the NDA is sufficient to cover competition, to cover solicitation, to cover many other things that it doesn't. The NDA is simply saying, I share sensitive information with you, and you're not authorized to share this information with anyone else without my consent. Okay, that's the NDA. It doesn't talk about competing. It doesn't talk about solicitation. For those two, we have two different agreements. The non-compete agreement means that an employee cannot leave the company and start their own business, drawing clients from that old company. Okay, they cannot compete with the company. This is somewhat not really enforceable on in most countries, but it's still something that we sign. We try to limit that to make it more enforceable in the eyes of court, but not always. So as you do your hiring and as you make them sign the non-compete, know that it cannot provide the protection that you probably intended to. So you need to make sure to have more controls on that area. Maybe you don't want that individual to be exposed to all clients if they don't need it to do their job. Okay, always ask yourself, what does this guy need to see and touch in order for them to do their job? Okay, this is part of it. The non-compete is probably some sort of a control we want to have in place, to avoid that threat from getting material. The non-solicitation agreement says that this employee that worked for me cannot now draw or solicit other employees to come and work for them. Okay, they cannot solicit employees, they cannot solicit customers to come and work for them or come to work with them. Okay, so this is non-solicitation in most employment agreement. We don't see this existing, and this is something you, as security professionals, will be required to change. Okay, CISSP, they love asking about these three controls simply because people are not familiar with all three. They're familiar with non-compete, with NDA, are very, very much familiar, but the non-solicitation is not that familiar with security professionals, and we all should be more familiar with them. Okay, so they like asking about this one as well. So let's go over the checklist here. Quickly look at the checklist for new employees. And again, personnel security, that's what we're talking about. The job description should include something about privacy and security if it's relevant. Classification of the job responsibilities. Again, put it in the right container. Make sure the person is exposed to the data and touches the systems that they need to in order for them to do their job. The tasks that they do need to be confined or contained in that area. Preventing collusion. Collusion is a big one. It's not collision. Collusion is when two people collude to conspire. Okay? So collusion is some sort of an action taken in the path of conspiracy. Okay? Two people work together to conspire against the organization. The previous president, the US president, always used that as a way to blame part of his staff along the term that he spent in the White House. He kept saying the collusion in the FBI, the collusion in Secret Service. They collude with others, they collude with Russia in all these allegations. Candidate screening, background checks, security clearance, all there to make sure the employee is contained in that environment, and we can monitor this environment by making sure, all the written agreements, all the policies, procedures, AUP, and all boundaries that we set are kept by that person, by that employee. Two more slides, and then I'll let you guys ask questions. Here, the personnel controls, we cover the fraud controls. Okay, so write fraud up there in the right corner where the white area, just write fraud. So when you encounter questions about fraud, go to this slide and see that it makes sense to you. Again, separation of duties, no one person can close the loop on a full business process. Least privileges, we want to minimize their footprint. Job rotation to discover, and mandatory vacation to, again, discover that fraudsters. Sorry, this one and another one, and that's it. Then I'm going to let you guys ask questions, and then I'm going to take a break, okay? So bear with me for a couple more minutes. Termination of employment, this is when we say, okay, we're done. We're going separate ways, the organization and the employee, okay? This part is important because they ask about this part from different angles. What is the number one problem with termination of employment? The answer is the lack of communication. Remember that communication and collaboration? Lack of communication between HR or a direct manager from when an employee is terminated and the IT and the security guys to terminate their access to to their systems, to the data. Okay, so it probably takes I don't know 2, 3, 4 weeks before they mention this to someone in IT. Oh, this and that guy, Chen, we just fired him. And all this time, 2, 3, 4 weeks, Chen has access to our systems and our database. So we don't want to do that. Okay, so termination of agreements, mass layoffs, they need immediate care by security and IT to eliminate their access. Okay, immediately eliminate access. And the way we want to make sure that this is all done is by monitoring. But when we do monitor our employees for privacy reasons, we want to make sure they know about this. This is also very important in the CISSP and in general. When you monitor your employees, you don't want to do it under the radar. You don't want to do it in a stealth mode, because then you violate their privacy. You're in a much bigger problem than just violating security rules of your organization, okay? Organizations are always stronger in the eyes of regulators, privacy regulators, on privacy requirements, okay? Does this whole thing make sense to you? Employee and personnel security and privacy along this,
They do.
fraudsters and fraud detection. Carol, you wanted to say something?
They do. I just answered your question.
Okay. Thank you, Carlo. You're number one cooperator today. Thank you. Okay, so let's take 15 minutes break. 3:17, we'll be back here. And I want you guys to clear your minds. You know what? Let's take it in 20 minutes break, because I really want you to clear your minds. The next part is one of the most important parts of your CISSP. I assume that we will get to it tomorrow morning, but apparently our pace is very, very good today. We cover a lot, which is a good thing. Okay, that leaves us more room to practice and go back to areas that probably didn't cover enough during this bootcamp. It's good. It's really, really good. So I want you to take 20 minutes break now. Clear your minds. Don't look at presentations. That just put everything aside in CISSP. We'll come back here in 20 minutes, and then we'll cover one of the most important areas of our CISSP. All right, guys? All right. See you in 20.
Bye-bye.